How are you? Let's talk about Santa. I think you'll find this interesting. Now, this is a big bottle of De Janeiro. Holy cow. Little splash of bourbon. Little splash of De Janeiro. That's probably good. All right. So, Santa Claus. You know him. Red hat, beard, likes milk and cookies. Clearly not lactose intolerant. So, the story of Santa Claus is not the creation of Coca-Cola from the 30s and 40s into the 50s, nor is it St. Nicholas the Bishop, or a children's story told by, was it Clement Moore, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas? I'm going to argue that the story exists, or the traditions, maybe that's a better way to say it, the traditions that exist are because of a small living being with great hallucinogenic powers. No, not an elf. It's the Amanita Mascari Mushroom. Let me say that again, because it's a lot. The Amanita Mascari Mushroom. Mushrooms. Here, take a look. Here's a picture. Right? Okay, again, the Amanita Mascari Mushroom. And it has hallucinogenic properties. So I believe this little fungi helped shape the tradition or spirit of Santa Claus more than St. Nicholas, Coke, and that cat that wrote the story, or Charles Dickens, anybody. So a long time ago, the indigenous people of the North Pole, I believe especially the Koryaks and Kamakadales of Siberia, celebrated the winter solstice, which begins December 21st. And like most cultures, they celebrated it for several weeks, basically the beginning of winter. I'm sure you know it's cold in Siberia. But anyway, they would celebrate the winter solstice. Now, one of their many rituals or celebrations was the tribe shaman, the medicine man, or medicine person, would gather up the Amanita mushrooms, which grew underneath birch and pine trees, in their local tribe, with plans to consume them. And here, take a look. Here's modern pictures of the shamans of this area, and note their clothes. And I believe there's another shot of this magnificent mushroom. Take a look. Okay, so you can see in the photo, the shamans are quite striking, and the mushroom itself is just really, if you saw that underneath a tree, I wouldn't eat it, but anyway. Now, the reality is these mushrooms are rather toxic if they're ingested raw. They could kill you, probably would not, depending on how many you ate, but you'll certainly get sick. Probably more sick than the high is worth. So before any of these indigenous folks would eat these shrooms, the shaman would dehydrate them by putting them in a sock over a fire. Sound familiar to anybody? Any Santa fans? Does that sound familiar? Right? Stockings were hung by the chimney with care. Anyway, there's more. Additionally, reindeer, yes, reindeer, help reduce the toxic nature of these mushrooms, because apparently they don't suffer the effects of the toxins like a human does. So the shaman would basically the shaman of the Koryaks and the other folks would drink reindeer urine. I don't know how exactly they got the reindeer urine, but apparently the reindeer and other animals really, really love these mushrooms because it also gave them hallucinogenic effects. And it's known that the reindeer, besides the people being happy and joyous, the reindeer would actually be quite happy and would sort of prance around. And it's said that the shaman and the people would, they'd almost be in slow motion, almost as if they were in flight. Right? Full hallucination. Anyway, so the legend sort of states that the shaman, when they're in this hallucinogenic state, could see the future, could see the past, allowing them to judge their tribe members. Sound familiar? And they could also make themselves big or small. Also very Santa-like, a little wiggle of the nose. Also very much like Alice in Wonderland and Gulliver's Travels, those two books. So much so, it's actually called, I think it's Gulliverian and Lilliputian are the phrases when you're hallucinating for getting big or small. They've actually named it. Anyway, now the shaman during their trips, they would want to share the reindeer pee and their recently dried mushrooms with the members of their tribe. Now, since it's the dead of winter, well, it's not the dead of winter, it's the beginning of winter in Siberia and the north, presumably there's a lot of snow around their dwellings that are covered with animal hides. Essentially, I guess, teepees. I don't know if we're still allowed to say teepees, but they're dwellings. Well, since the doors were blocked or covered with snow, the shaman would climb to the top of the dwelling where there was always a hole in between the hides, for the smoke and to waft out of the dwelling. And you'll never guess what they did. They'd say, "Hey, Ted!" They drop down through that hole, give out some gifts. Nothing like some reindeer piss and dried mushrooms. What says Christmas more than reindeer piss and dried mushrooms? I don't know. That's pretty awesome. Now, the funny thing is, as you saw in those pictures too, the shamans during this time would dress very similar to the mushrooms. The red and white clothing, and obviously reindeer are very common there, so the leather that they used was reindeer leather, which, as I understand it, depending on how it's tanned, over time turns black. So their reindeer leather boots would turn black. Sound familiar? Right? Isn't that amazing? Now, over time, these shamanic archetypes change slightly, and as groups migrate and nothing's forever, Druids took some of this tradition, of course, to Great Britain. Then over time, through cultural exchange, those traditions get combined with the Germanic and Nordic myths. Think of Odin and is it Wotan, the Nordic cat? But they used to talk about those two gods when they traveled at night. Often they were chased by demons in a sleigh with horses that foamed at the mouth, probably eating some of those magic mushrooms, right? In a sleigh, not perfect, but it's working. And then with time, Christianity comes along and starts to relate the Christmas tradition with the 4th century Saint Nicholas, the Turkish 4th century Turkish, Saint Nicholas. I think he was from Bari or Barai, and he used to give gifts to children and the needy. And here's a picture or an illustration, I guess, of not a picture, an illustration of him. Notice the clothing. right? So then along, speed this up. Then along comes Coca-Cola, Clemens' Nightmare Before Christmas, and all the other traditions that sort of come about over the centuries. But I really believe some of the original Santa stuff is tied directly to this Amanita Mascaria mushroom. Take a look at these old postcards. Do you see anything that looks familiar? So, this holiday season, I don't know if these are legal or not legal. I don't know if they grow here. But 'tis the season. Maybe we should all have some Amanita mushrooms and take a trip, see what happens. Anyway, do a little digging, look it up. I think you'll find a lot of, in all seriousness, a lot of really interesting stuff. And I really do think that some of these ancient traditions have just been passed down, morphed and changed. Just like Coca-Cola's advertising from the 40s and 50s has certainly solidified, at least in this country, our interpretation of Santa Claus. If you go back way before, it is completely different. But I thought it was really interesting, and this time of the year, it's fun to sort of, at least for me anyway, and hopefully for you, to learn a little something about Christmas, the holidays, and why we do some of the things we do as traditions. So anyway, in this world, when you can be anything you want, you be kind, be humble, be forgiving, and again, let's see if we can't get some of these Amanita mushrooms. I gotta make some phone calls. Anyway, take care.